Now this presentation is only about an hour, so I think Peter said 45 minutes, so I have to hurry. So we're only going to touch the basics of basically the assess and implement phase, and we're going to focus mostly on that risk assessment part, and then how from that risk assessment part we map that to security levels. Um, so as said earlier, security level target is not so much that you just guess or or the company. So this is what I think we will be. It's going to be a result of a risk analysis. Um, Typically, this will be a qualitative risk analysis. It can be quantitative. It can be. I mean, there's also no definition on what risk analysis methodology you should use. I mean, nothing stops you from doing ISO 27005 if that's what you've been doing for the rest of your company. Um, there are, however, some differences, and I think a very important one is that we start our risk analysis when we start designing our system. As soon as we have a first assessment of what we will be building, how it will look like, we will start doing risk assessment, and we will use initial system diagrams. But typically, there's also a whole process of, you know, safety analysis that have been done, process hazard analysis that have been done. In some cases, even, environment impact analysis that have been done. So there's this whole um, existing information that we typically already have that we should optimize to our initial risk assessments. And the way it works with the initial risk assessment, we will do a very basic analysis of the information that we have, the system diagrams that we have, and basically we will try and put a service, a security level target based on that high level risk analysis. We will partition this in zone into conduits. We'll have this security level targets for each zone and conduit. And this is where it is somewhat different. If our initial risk analysis says that our tolerable risk is not exceeded or we don't expect it to exceed, there's actually a quick jump to we're done. That's not always quite true because there is a plan to check act cycle, but you can actually decide to have your security level targets defined based on a very low level risk analysis because your risk tolerance will not be exceeded. Um, if your risk tolerance is exceeded, there's um, a long and very detailed process. It's totally out of scope of this presentation. I did want to present the flow because there's things that we know in there. It's not so different from IT. We identify threats, we identify vulnerabilities, we determine consequence and impact. We look at the likelihood, and so it's not. Um, We'll do it system based. We will do it in zones and conduits. We will do it individually for each zones and conduits. Then we'll look at the entirety of the system. We will add information that doesn't exist in IT, like that famous process hazard analysis or that environmental analysis. But in reality, it's not so different from what we do every day in IT. Now, assuming that we have done our initial or high level risk analysis, it doesn't really matter. We'll get this typical table of likelihood and impacts. We will have an unmitigated risk, and we will have set at some point in time our risk tolerance. We'll have a tolerable risk. Why am I showing this? Because there's actually a very black and white formula to a very easy formula to translate the thing that we know, this matrix that we use every day, into a security level targets. So what we'll actually be doing is we'll take, from our risk analysis, our highest risk, we'll divide that through our tolerable risk. There's a small correction factor there, but we'll actually have a calculation to define our security level targets. Um, so this whole concept of security level targets, which I truly love because you can just say to your system integrator, to your vendor, to the person that you're buying from, you can just say, I want this security level. You can actually properly translate this, from a traditional ISO 27005, for example, risk analysis. Okay. The end result of our risk analysis, regardless of which if done an initial or a high level risk analysis, is a cybersecurity requirement specification. And that cybersecurity requirement specification will tell us a number of things, amongst which we will have defined security levels for the entirety of the system, or for specific zone and or conduits, or for specific foundational requirements in a zone, for example. But once we have that, and that's where I really enjoy this standard personally. Once we have defined, these security levels, which we talked about earlier, for each foundational requirement, we will find a very specific, a very um, straightforward, I would say, number of technical or other controls to implement. And for example, this control is um, human user identification authentication. It simply says this applies, the basic control applies to all security levels. Um, Now, if we want a security level 2 system, then we'll actually be able to have to make sure that we uniquely identify everybody. If you want to get to a security level 3 system, we will add multi-factor authentication for untrusted networks on there. If you need a security level 4 system, we will add multi-factor authentication on there. So it's a very, very clear structural way of knowing what to do, of having a control set to apply based on that identified security level. And I like this because it's very uniform. It's very exact. It's very audible. Your control sets, the interpretation of it, exactly how you implement, you'll have to document. But the actual control set is very easy to certify and to audit, and it ensures that you have, you know, over difficult verticals, different manufacturing companies, you can have a perfectly uniform level of protection using security levels.